If you're interested in supporting the channel, there are two things you can do. Flipside Gaming is offering a 10% discount for any order $10 or more if you use the promo code VOIDMAGE on their website. That is VOIDMAGE in all caps. I will also have an affiliate link to tcgplayer.com. If you use that link, any purchase you make on that website will go towards supporting the channel. I appreciate the support. Also hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Hello everyone, back again with another top 10 Commander video. It's a topic I've been looking into. After browsing edhrec.com, I noticed they have a salt rating for what they consider to be the saltiest cards, or the cards that make people the saltiest. I'm guessing that's what they meant. But it had cards like Stasis, Armageddon, and it was a rating out of 4. And I don't think any of them made it past 3. That should give you an idea of how laid back the format is. Everybody seems to be pretty chill. However, I would like to give my top 10 of the cards that I think are the most hated in the format, and I'm not one of those people that's going to give you the whole concept of an opinion before I do a top 10 list. That was obviously my own opinion, so I hope you can appreciate that moving forward. As always, I will give you honorable mentions, cards I left out, and we have certain things like Time Warp, which, not just Time Warp, obviously, there are other extra turn spells. The longer you make people wait, the more frustrated they get. So this is actually going to be when people take extra turns and don't actually win the game. That is incredibly annoying. If you're going to do something like this, just win. And then there's Armageddon. Well, not just Armageddon, because there are a million land destruction spells, things that just get rid of your land base. That's never fun, and it sometimes doesn't win the game. It just makes it much longer. Then we have some really one-sided cards like Consecrated Sphinx and Jin-Gitaxias. And yes, they're blue cards. I know some people are going to say I don't like blue for some reason, but most of you don't like these either. Hey, I'm going to have all the cards and you guys are going to have next to nothing. Yeah, I can see why a lot of people rush to remove these creatures. So, number 10 is Grand Arbiter Augustine. I've mentioned this guy before. I think he's terribly designed, mostly because Grand Arbiter doesn't really do anything himself. He's just a condition that lets you cast spells cheaper and forcing your opponents to pay one more for their spells. It's not really much to build a deck around, but some people do it, and going with a lot of frustrating cards you're probably going to see on this list, it can be made into one of the most unfun deck experiences ever. Fortunately enough, I haven't played that many Grand Arbiter decks, and I don't think he's around that much anymore, which is why he's only number 10. But as far as commander options go, I mean, come on. A commander that actually prevents you from playing the game, it's pretty bogus. Number 9 is a combination here. It's Soren Markov and Magister Sphinx. You could also throw in Tree of Perdition, but this is technically lower. The life total, I mean, both of which are really hated because they set opponents' life totals to 10. You can make the argument that if fully taken advantage of, Magister Sphinx is more oppressive because you can recur it. Soren Markov has the flexibility of just being mono black, and the added benefit of having Mindslaver on the alt. So all around, you have a really disgusting, mean-spirited planeswalker, and a creature with an ETB that has that same ability. You can blink it, recur it, have it come back over and over again. So either way, you're going to make people upset. Early in the game, if you can pull these off, that is almost certain to frustrate people. The number 8 is Gnarset Enlightened Master. Now, a commander option you're probably going to see way more of than Grand Arbiter. Gnarset is mostly hated because all it really takes is 1 or 2 attacks, and the game's over. And that is, of course, with a deck that is filled with a bunch of extra combat and extra turn spells. Pretty much the build up to that is fast mana, haste enabler, and can I attack and win the game. Compared to Grand Arbiter, Gnarset doesn't really allow for an experience, so it's hard to get that mad, but people still want to be able to just play the game. And a commander option with built-in hexproof eliminates so many ways of interacting with this kind of strategy. This isn't a competitive EDH discussion, this is an everywhere EDH discussion, because at least in competitive EDH you have a lot more interaction. This is just a commander option that is incredibly powerful and doesn't really allow you to interact with it in any way. Number 7 is Aras Shards. Now, what is deemed to be fair in Commander is sometimes up for debate. I don't think anybody likes being Rec-Saged, but when you pretty much turn every creature ETB of yours into a Rec-Sage, then it gets a little bit out of hand. This enchantment might as well just destroy every artifact and enchantment you don't control until this card actually leaves, which is really the most powerful thing about it, is that it's just going to stay on the field, so your opponents have to actually get rid of this before they want to resume their play, or else you're just going to keep blowing up their artifacts and enchantments. Pretty much taking what should just be fair removal and breaking it, but otherwise a fantastic card that belongs in a lot of decks. Number 6 is Voron Collects Voice of Hunger. This isn't land destruction, but it slows your opponents down a bit more fair. but is usually put into heavy green decks that have no problem ramping up their own mana. Voron Collects and a lot of the Praetors are known for being incredibly one-sided. Voron Collects is probably the most hated, even compared to Jin-Gitaxias. Voron Collects actually forces your opponents to stop playing the game if they're paying too much mana for their spells. Those lands are not going to untap during their next untap step, so it forces them to actually have to plan it out. Probably one of the more fair cards, I would say, that is hated, and even though the ability is really powerful, it's not something like a Stasis, which is actually going to stop people from playing the game. I guess it's just considering the pace of a game, especially in casual EDH, throwing something like this out there is sometimes unexpected and can really take control over games. Number 5 is a card that is everywhere now in white decks, Fairies Protection. The one card answer to pretty much anything. Hey guys, I'm gonna wipe the board. Nope, not my board, and the problem's solved. And yeah, the card is pretty expensive, but that doesn't stop it from seeing play in so many white decks. It's just the perfect answer to pretty much any kind of removal. And when you think about all the mana people invest in solving their problems with removal, let's say you built up this massive board and your opponents finally have the answers to stop you, and you throw out a Fairies Protection and say, nope, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go make myself a sandwich, and I'll come back to you, buddy. Fairies Protection is so unfair. There's no other card that really does anything like Fairies Protection. I recognize why so many people don't like it. It's everywhere. But the thing that I probably hate about it the most is the fact that it doesn't get reprinted. It's only printed in one deck in Commander 2017, and we haven't seen it since, and probably won't for a while. So hopefully that changes. And then number 4 is Winter Orb. Now there's also Static Orb. I like Winter Orb a little bit better though. It has that condition where it doesn't work if it's tapped, which works out pretty well with Urza. Just a very powerful card in a lot of commander decks like Derevi. Also Grand Arbiter works out pretty well with some of these cards. If you can limit the amount of mana your opponents have to work with, cards like those are going to be so powerful and seem a lot more oppressive. A staple in just about all of the stacks decks in the format. And if you're talking about unfun experiences, a lot of that has to do with stacks. The number 3 is a card that just about every blue deck plays if they really want to, Mystic Study. It's not even because the ability is unfair, it's really not. I mean, there's Mystic Remora, which doesn't really see that much play, but I think it's still pretty good. Mystic Study is mostly annoying and hated because it requires you to pay attention to the game, so you actually have to ask people whether or not they want to pay an extra mana for their spells. So every time you play a spell, you have to either pay an extra mana or let them draw a card, which is usually a no-brainer. If you have open mana, you might as well do it. The blue deck drawing more cards is not a good thing. And because it's such a good card in blue, it does see play almost everywhere. And I find that it usually doesn't get removed because there's something more urgent to deal with. And Mystic Study just draws cards. Well, that gets out of hand and it's a game of a million questions. All those questions being, do you want to pay another mana or let me draw a card? Ridiculously good card, but I wish the design was a little bit better so you didn't have to ask that many times. Number 2 was a card that I mentioned with Soren Markov, Mindslaver. Now Mindslaver is just cruel. There's no other way to put it. An artifact that doesn't exile just goes to your graveyard after you use the ability, which means you can bring it back with something like Shroom the Hegemon and use it all over again. Taking control of another player's turn is one of the worst things that you can do. It's arguably even worse than just stopping them from playing the game altogether with something like a Stasis, because you can actually work to derail the rest of their game. You get to play their spells, and it pretty much becomes a 2-on-2 game where you're just unwillingly helping the opponent with the Mindslaver. Really nasty card, and because it's just a colorless artifact, like Winter Orb, it could see play anywhere, and you never know. And I find in most games, if you are able to bring back a Mindslaver, people just don't want to play anymore. It's just going to make the game much longer and a lot less fun for the opponent who's getting Mindslavered. And then the number 1 card that I think is the most hated in Commander, and it's not Deadeye Navigator. It is Cyclonic Rift, probably the most hated blue card. A one-sided board wipe, pretty much. Yeah, you get the cards to your hand, you could replay them, but most of the time, this is going to shut down what your opponents are trying to do. It's usually just the inconvenience of when it's played, because it's instant speed overloaded. You just have to hold up that 7 mana and play it at your opponent's end step. So their whole turn they were working to build up a board presence, paying all their mana, and you just bounced all their stuff to their hands, which means they get a whole turn with their board that wasn't Cyclonic Rifted and an opponent's board that is likely completely empty. All non-land permanents, so it's an answer for pretty much anything. Indestructible, hexproof, shroud, Planeswalkers, the ultimate answer for many decks, and that's why it sees a ton of play. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for this list of the top 10 most hated cards in Commander. Let me know what you think. You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.